Welcome back to Fullerton College's Pre-Press Combined Lecture. This is Professor Ben Hewitt, and today we're going to take a look at the PIA Pre-Press Trainees Manual, Section 3.6, Digital File Problems and Solutions. In this section, we're going to take a look at an actual file, and if you want to follow along at home, you'll notice in our course outline today, I've included both files for download, both a problem file and a corrected version. The good and the bad of the good, the bad, and the ugly right there. Although the bad and the ugly are kind of the same thing in printing. They're kind of interchangeable terms, aren't they? Anyways, let's take a look at what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to look through at the most common file problems and solutions, like what are the issues that you're normally going to see in customer supplied files and how do you fix them? This is the meat and potatoes, the central core of what it is that we're trying to do in pre-press in general. The part that makes our job necessary and continue to exist in a increasingly automatic and automated system of production. Human eyes and human experts to figure out what's wrong with things and to find ways of correcting them are still vital to all sorts of output. We're going to look at the difference between missing fonts and font substitution because they're not the same, though they have similar things. We're also going to look at the difference between missing and low resolution images, because you get similar results and similar symptoms, but from very different diseases in both of those cases. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to look through that file. If not, pause your video now and use some of those pre-flight techniques we talked about in my video about how to use Acrobat to pre-flight files. And some of the things in there you're going to find are findable through searching through profiles, but other ones are just going to be, honestly, the good old-fashioned Mark I human eyeball, which is still one of the best tools for checking things for errors. We're very good at evaluating what we're looking at as a species. And you guys, as my pre-press people, are even better at evaluating things by eyeball. So, customer supplied problems always come with issues. You cannot always just take a file that someone gives you and print it. In fact, it's a rare day that that can happen. And it often is not a random luck thing. It's something that comes from years of working with your customers and helping them improve their craft so that when they send things to you, they are already ready, as opposed to them sending you a half-finished or sloppily finished or poorly finished product that you then get to figure out how to make work. Almost every job, and this is true here, almost every job you get from a client is going to have some sort of problem. One of the weird things, kind of like how a doctor gets to know the health issues of their clients and their patients, as you work in pre-press, you'll get to know that there are specific problems that plague certain clients. Some are able to overcome these, like my super awesome example that I love sharing over and over again because it was the biggest success of my pre-press career, was at Hawaiian Hotels Group, who I helped guide to figure out how to fix their common problems so they never had them again. Unfortunately, not everybody's willing to take those things, which is going back to the doctor analogy. Like the doctor saying, yeah, you've got a heart problem. You need to stop smoking and stop eating that kind of food because that's giving you the problem. And the patient can either change their lifestyle and have a healthier heart, or they can continue to enjoy the fast food that's causing their heart condition. Just as a random example. Anyways, so file problems waste time and money. Time and money are often seen as interchangeable in the business world, and I have to counter that and say, no, not actually. In fact, time is far more valuable than money. You can always find a source of money. Somebody's willing to lend you money. You can borrow it somewhere in the business, but you can never borrow, save, use time except at the rate that it comes. You'll never get more time. It only leaves. Anyways, so we're going to take a look at the exercise here. Hopefully you guys, again, have had a chance to look through these files visually and maybe do a little bit of searching for things like missing fonts and graphical resolution levels. Let's go ahead and take a look here. How many mistakes did you guys find? One of them, the good one, comes through cleanly without problems. The bad one comes through, well, bad. So here are some of the most common problems. You'll find that you're missing fonts. You'll find that fonts are substituted. You'll find that graphics are missing and that there are low resolution images included. Those are four main problems. There are others, including color space issues and blending modes and things along those lines. But at least for this exercise, we're looking mostly for some nuts and bolts. Also, oh my gosh, bleed, bleed, bleed is always a problem. Always. Okay, so in your document, if you found them, several pages are missing fonts. I need to update this by saying that some of this is not fully up to date on the fonts that you'd be seeing. Um, Typically speaking, in the old days, Courier was one of the common substitute fonts. Courier is that kind of typewriter looking one on the left of PIA/GATF there. That was one of those. If you don't find it, the computer will fill in for you and the computer will choose that. Nowadays, that everyone is using mostly InDesign and Illustrator to create their projects, you're going to find that the two typefaces that show up when they shouldn't be there are if they used, sorry, my brain is skipping a beat here, but let's go back to it. If they're using InDesign, you're probably going to find, or you should look for, Myriad Pro. I think I said the wrong word. Yes, I did. I'm terribly sorry. My brain wires got crossed for some reason. Mr. Vacuum started up in my room here and I had to go stop him. Anyways, InDesign, you're going to look for Minion Pro. If Minion shows up, that means you probably are missing a font, and that's one of the substitutes that it likes to use. The default font and the substitute font from Illustrator, and more people are doing their layouts in Illustrator these days as the Venn diagram of InDesign and Illustrator becomes more and more circular, you will find that Myriad Pro will start showing up. And Myriad is chosen on purpose sometimes, but unless you're working on a Starbucks logo, there's a good chance that it wasn't actually intended. Courier is one of the ones in the earlier days and was definitely one that would show up from Quark Express files that were incorrectly made, and the fonts weren't embedded correctly. Font substitution is even more insidious and much worse. This is when you don't send the original version of a font along with a print file, and the local computer that's doing the output picks a font that is similar. It's the same thing made by somebody else, and that doesn't always work. Font substitution is a much more insidious problem than just missing fonts. Missing fonts at least show up as, oh, that's not supposed to be there. Font substitution looks like it's supposed to be there, but it's not actually there. And that's much more dangerous because it will still throw off your formatting. And it's called text reflow, where the spacing of the letters doesn't quite add up to what it should have if they use the same version. So even though you're using Times Roman and they're using Times Roman and it's all Times New Roman, new, fine, Times, Roman Times New, and the computer interprets it slightly different because everyone and their mother has made their own version of Times New Roman and published it. There are thousands of versions of Times New Roman floating out there. So while I may dislike the look of papyrus and I may think the Comic Sans is unprofessional, I fear Times New Roman because there are so many versions that if someone sends it to me and they didn't include the font correctly, I may never know there's a problem. So that's much more difficult to find. And that can totally throw off things. The best way to figure out that it's a problem is you look at the text and see if there's anything that's obviously cut off. I found this out on one of my early projects, another one of those big wins. The very first day of work at my last job doing pre-press, I had a text reflow problem where it was substituting a font. And it was a postcard for a test prep company. It was supposed to say the best just got better. And that was their slogan for that year's advertising campaign. And the front of the card said the best just got bet plus. Or bet dash. Anyways, it was cutting off at the slogan and overflowing the text and printing that way because someone didn't include a font correctly. I caught that in the first few minutes of working there. It's a hell of a first impression to make on somebody to find a problem like that right off the bat. One of the reasons I had such a good go at that place. I started out on the right foot. Anyways, that's a font substitution. It was a different version of a font they were using and the spacing was different. I was able to work with the people and get them to fix it. But anyways, font substitution. And as I'm fond of pointing out, you don't want substitutes in your hamburgers. So you don't want substitutes in your fonts. Don't forget the famous lawsuit that Taco Bell won while defending because someone was complaining that their 100% beef advertisements were not accurate because the beef they were giving wasn't 100% beef. It had weird fillers in it. Unfortunately, through some weird legal thingy, Taco Bell got off on the fact that I say got off, I mean that were let off and they won the suit and did not have to pay out because their advertising was not false. You see, the meat that was meat was 100% meat. So anyways, substitution. tricky thing in foods, trickier thing in fonts. Missing graphics. There's a difference between a low resolution graphic and a missing graphic. I believe we talked about this in InDesign before, and maybe I'll throw a demo video out there along with this just to show this issue. InDesign and Quark Express as well don't actually put your pictures into the document until it's printed. While you might say, oh, why can't I just put the picture in? That's so convenient. Don't forget that when you're using the Pottery Barn 17-pound, 4-inch thick catalog worth of images, that's going to slow even a good computer down to snail speeds. And that's going to cause significant output delays and cause you problems of trying to even scroll through the pages to check for things. Therefore, InDesign and Illustrator don't actually put the graphics in. They just put a placeholder and say, oh yeah, later on, I'm going to go back and put that picture in when I do my output. So what they show you oftentimes is a low resolution or screen resolution meant for your monitor only. I call them ghosts. It's not the real term, but I think of them as ghosts. It's just this image of what it was left over after it's gone. So you can get these placeholder to-do list post-it notes stuck in your file that say, replace this picture with the real thing when I print, please. But if the path to that link is unclear, or the link is broken, as the technical term is, if the computer cannot find the actual print file version of that picture when it goes to export or goes to print, then it's going to leave that little low resolution placeholder that was just showing you on your screen what it was supposed to look like, and actually send that to press. And those come through low resolution. Another issue you can see on this with the buying power, really awful, outdated clip art there, that buying power strength in members thing. The one on the good version of the file has a transparent background. The low resolution version does not, because oftentimes a low resolution version is a quickly made JPEG that does not support transparency. That's one of the ways you can tell that it's missing and not just low res. If it looks like it should have a transparency to it and it does not, that's a good key indicator that there's something wrong going on there. So to solve these problems, you do a file collection. We looked at this last time, where you collect all the files you need. A lot of times, you can do this automatically. You can also have to sometimes search out files that are missing on a hard drive. And let me tell you, that is a tedious, boring, and long process. Also, my last job, when I picked up for the guy who was leaving to go start his burger empire. By the way, his burgers are fantastic if you ever find them. I actually went to his diner once. When he left to quit being a pre-press tech and go be a burger artist, his file management was kind of wonky, and he left me searching through folders of unorganized pictures and unorganized fonts, and it took me a year to catch up and get his stuff put into findable folders so we could actually refer to projects in the future. It would take like 4 hours to dig up all the files you needed for something. Anyways, the way to avoid that kind of thing is to package. In Quark Express, it's called Collect for Output, and it will find all the things in the computer and make a folder for them and save them for you. In InDesign, which is what everybody uses nowadays, it's Create Package. I think it's also like Command Shift Option P, and that'll get you, it'll send the package thing to pop up and you can do it. But anyways, keyboard shortcuts that I may be quoting incorrectly aside, this copies all of the linked files and puts them into folders for you. If they've been embedded, it does not copy them. And it also generates a report. In either system, if you do this, you'll get a pop-up saying, hey, make sure you own the rights to these fonts before you send them to somebody, letting you know that there are policies on this. And remember, somebody spent a lot of time, energy, and training to learn how to be good at making fonts, and they deserve to be paid for their expertise and their work. So make sure you're not stealing fonts this way. But it is legally permissible to send a copy just for output purposes to make sure that text reflow does not happen. Printers usually require, and you should require, that people send you the necessary fonts to produce the font, to produce the job, all of them, not just the ones you don't have. Don't say, oh, no problem, I have Helvetica, I'll be fine, just send me the ones I don't have. Oh, no, 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 you want their version of Helvetica to avoid that text reflow issue. Because if you have a different version of Times New Roman than they have as Times Roman New or another Times New Roman, made by somebody else, it's not going to work. All right, we're going to stop here and pick back up in a second video.